Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you. Hello, welcome to Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering, and our co-hosts CARLO, PARCELLI, and Billy Bob are with us today. Later joining us on the show, we hope, is Regis Tremblay in the Crimea, talking about Ukraine all around my brain. So what are some new developments, guys, that you want to discuss today?
There's so many new developments. Where to begin is the question. It's always best to start discussions like this with just contextualizing, what's happened so far and where we're at now. And that could take all show, or you could summarize it into, a few sentences, which we should probably do. Essentially, we had it for a long time of the special military operation. We had a slow roll of Russian advancement into Ukraine, and and everybody was thinking it's just going to continue. They're going to take out Kharkiv. They're going to take out Odessa, and this SMO is just going to eat up Ukraine, and they're going to force a surrender from Kiev. And then you had the counteroffensive, which in about 6 days retook what took the Russians several months to occupy, and that that's caused a lot of turmoil, and a lot of opinions are just going every which way, and there's all kinds of narratives explaining what happened and why. So that's a definite interesting topic of conversation. How did that happen? What should we think about that? And then also, going forward, what is Russia going to do about the situation? And so, we had the partial mobilization. We have, what else do we have?
Yeah.
I was gonna, other developments. The pipelines getting sabotaged, which is a little bit unrelated to the actual borders of the front lines of the war effort. But that's also a huge thing to discuss, because there's counter narratives about who's responsible, and obviously the United States is responsible, but the United States is saying with a straight face, "Oh no, it wasn't us. Maybe it was Russia. It could have been Russia. We don't know." But what's the other thing that Russia was going to do to the mobilization of 300,000 people? I think they also, there's been a report this whole time of a lot of air assets, being mobilized along the front line, but we haven't seen them in operation. So is there another big offensive being planned? We have rain coming. We have winter coming. What are the time frames? Is there a plan? Does Russia have a plan, or are they really a little bit inept? That's kind of the discussion that I see playing out. And there's a lot of people that I would listen to about the Ukraine situation that are pretty angry, and they're pretty unhappy, and they're thinking Russia, is not, doing things how they would have expected them to be, and there's some incompetence. But it's hard to know. It's hard to know what the people in charge are looking at, why they're making decisions. We don't know that, and they might be making reasonable decisions. They're looking at the totality of things. They're being cautious. So it's definitely it's tough to be armchair quarterbacks, Monday morning quarterbacks, and judge these things. But I'm rambling on, and I'm just trying to contextualize and kind of guide the discussion. So any thoughts on that, CARLO?
Yeah, that was a good start. It was a good handle. I just want to say one thing about the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines is that the notion that Russia bombed their own pipelines puts all the liberal left in the category of QAnon people. So they should join with the QAnon people because that's the level at which reality they're operating on. At that, but to flesh out the what's transpired on the ground in Russia, excuse me, in Ukraine, is that first of all, the Ukrainians took back much of the area that they had ceded to Russia around Kharkiv, to the east of Kharkiv, up to the Uglitz River, and they're still making some incursions there, and they took Liman, which was in some people's minds a very important hub, in other people's minds, say Alexander McCourse, for example, not so important. Now, more recently in Kherson, however you pronounce it, they have taken some. The Ukrainians have taken also some more ground along the Dnieper River, but even the New York Times and the Washington Post have ceded that was probably more of a tactical maneuver by the Russians to shorten their lines, their lines of defense. That's also an argument that's been used for the Kharkiv region. That it was a pullback because, for one example, I remember hearing over and over again in the media, it was one area was being defended basically by two police SWAT teams. They weren't even soldiers defending the area, and there was only 30 to 50 of them. And when you talk about Liman, there was the reports are there was 500 Russian LPR people there. That's the Luhansk, Luhansk militia defending against 6,000 to 10,000. Ukrainians. So they had no. They valiantly defended the area as long as they could, and then they pulled out before they were encircled. So, and the other hot spot is the Bakhmut region, where the Wagner divisions, that is the private army of the Russians, is supposedly making slow but incremental advances. But if I had a dentist that pulled my tooth like that, I would prefer death. Because it's been such a slow slog. But in the Russians' defense, I've read many commentators who know far more than I do about these things, who have pointed out that is that the Ukrainians, having 8 years to dig in to produce their genocide against the Russian-speaking peoples, they had fortified that area so that it was the most fortified plot of earth on the planet. It's just bunker after bunker, concrete reinforcements, so on and so forth. The other aspect that we could touch on is the referendum, which is now obviously been ratified by the Russian Duma and signed on by Putin, and that makes the recent losses look even worse. And the word I'm hearing from a lot of people is that it should have been done in June, when there were military people on the ground in Ukraine, Russian military people on the ground in Ukraine that urged it. That was when Russia was making steady but incremental advances, and that would have gone over better with the public, rather than this atmosphere where it seems like Russia's giving up ground. Go ahead. I should leave it there.
Dima from the Military Summary Channel, he describes the strategy of Russia right now as kind of Mongolian. I think he uses the word Mongolian tactics. Essentially, he's talking about they retreat and then they give a Pyrrhic victory, right? They give a Pyrrhic victory. They destroy so many troops and so many armaments and tanks and things like that. That it's like it's really a war of attrition, and they're attritioning the Ukrainian forces because they don't want to stand and fight. So they're avoiding. They're really conserving their most precious and important resource, which is their manpower. And so they're not worried too much about the land, and they're using these tactics where they hold it in a position, but then when Ukrainian has their overwhelming manpower, they do retreat because they don't want to stand, fight, and die, and then they just deliver some real bad losses to the Ukrainians. So that's called the Mongolian tactics, but that's not gonna those tactics never are going to be something that's going to lead to victory. So the question is, that thought process leads you to think that, Russia is changing their approach, and now they're mobilizing 300,000 people. And well, maybe they should have just had some foresight and done that at the beginning. But again, to second guess things like that, it's tough because we don't know what other economic factors they're weighing, public opinion, etc. But those tactics of with 200,000 or less people on that really long front line is never going to result in a victory against this NATO trained and equipped army that is 3 or 4 times the size of the Russian one. So I think Scott Ritter said the other day, it's not just the 300,000 mobilization that they're doing, but there's also about 70,000 volunteers. So it's going to be closer to 400,000. And the question is, when are they coming online? What's the strategy once they deploy those forces? And in the meantime, you got to assume Ukraine is training another 400,000 or 500,000 people in Germany right now, right? It would be foolish to not assume that that's what they're doing. So, I've learned that watching these analysts that make you feel good about the situation, they're not always telling, they don't know what's going on, and they're painting a rosy picture, but reality, is a little bit different. So I've learned to be some healthy skepticism about these alternative analysts. I think Scott Ritter's actually been pretty good because I remember he talked about the game changer and everybody took him to task, and I sat down with an hour and he told me that was one of his best interviews, and he explained exactly what he meant and what his critics can do, and it was a great interview. But it turns out he's really been vindicated by that. There's people like us that have no actual expertise that can talk a good game, and then there's actual experts. And so I think sometimes the people that can talk a good game forget that they're not actual experts, and they should leave it. So I think Scott's an actual expert, but it remains to be seen. Dealing with the winter, that's going to be a material factor in the war. How soon they can get the 300. The mobilized 300 into the fight, what their plans are for those people, that remains to be seen how that's going to play out. I did learn, unfortunately for Western Europe, that they were really hoping that this winter might be like last winter, where it's a rather warm winter, but actually it's going to be the opposite from what I hear. It's actually going to be a rather cold winter. As far as average temperatures go, it's going to be one of the colder winters they've had for a while, which is definitely bad for Western Europe. And so I think the U.S. obviously to kind of seal off a particular political option of ending the sanctions and saying okay, let's just take this Russian oil. The U.S. kind of took that off the table by destroying the pipelines. And so that's no longer, Western Europe can no longer go to Russia and say, okay, you know what, it's not worth it. Let's have some agreement. Let's get this oil flowing again. So the U.S. really took that option off the table for the politicians in Europe. And it's impossible that should not be viewed as anything other than an attack on Europe. It's a United States attack on the people of Europe. And unfortunately, it's not reported like that, right? The press is in league with the capitalist class, and so they spin the narratives and they tell the lies that they're supposed to do, and that's how the establishment media works hand in glove with the capitalist ruling class, and so all the people end up making the sacrifices for the strategies and the struggles, the sacrifices that need to be made to benefit not working class interests, but to benefit the interests of the ruling elite. That's whose interests are being benefited by Europe freezing right now. It's not the people. So I can pontificate for another 2 minutes if you want.
Let me interject
please.
thing here, because you reminded me of so many other things.
Yeah.
First of all, as I've stated many times, well, not many times, but a number of times on this show, that one of the stated tactics of U.S. foreign policy with the advent of the EU was to destroy the EU and make sure it remained subservient to American power, U.S. power, and that's clearly stated in the 1993 87-page summary of the Project for the New American Century. And one of the people who is one of the co-authors with other heinous fascists like Richard Pearl and the names are legend. I can't.
Kagan? Are you going to say Kagan?
Kagan, absolutely. Yeah. Victoria Nuland's husband.
Yes.
A woman who was instrumental in staging the 2014 Maidan coup, which every fucking goddamn, I'm getting worked up here, every fucking goddamn bleeding heart Ukrainian supporter still doesn't know about. And I'm so sick of getting people that don't even know the basics. And I just basically shut up if you don't know it. Okay. So one of the intentions, obviously, U.S. policymakers can see that far ahead, and they said, well, this will be one of the advantages of pushing the Ukrainian war we want to go Russia into war so we can break it up. We can break the Federation up. We can get rid of Putin, because Putin, we were wrong. He's not another Yeltsin. He's somebody who really has the interest of his own people at heart and has advanced tremendously their well-being. Under Yeltsin, the life expectancy rate hit an absolute new low, but now Putin's got it back up again. People are living, people are eating, people are enjoying, a proper life, and so the U.S. can't stand that. They can't. You cannot have that. I mean, it's either U.S. tutelage where you drive hundreds of thousands of people in the street like Haiti as we speak this morning, or foment another coup like they did in Burkina Faso 2 days ago, and you have to live with that. If you don't like it, you will shut the fuck up. We're going to starve you for our own interest. That's all we're concerned about. And so it's been a boon for U.S. foreign policy makers, because they're not only have the potential, they feel they still have the potential for breaking up Russia, breaking up the Russian Federation, but at the same with all this talk about Russia getting closer to China, which it has, notwithstanding, but they can also take down Europe. They can make Europe basically lick the shoes of the U.S., because Europe now has to rely on U.S. liquid natural gas at 8 times the price they were paying the Russians, and also the U.S. doesn't have enough to supply them, which is the dirty.
We don't have the infrastructure set up to get it to them, and we don't have enough to supply them anyway.
They haven't got the terminals built to receive it. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, what do you think? The U.S. can't do this without the complicity of the European capitalist class, without the financial elite agreeing to the policies. They don't have any actual control except for the fact that the politicians that make the decisions, identify with the Western capitalist class, and they understand that their people, Schultz knows that the Germans themselves need to sacrifice. He's unhappy about it because that means he's personally going to be out of power and hated by the people. But he's still going to do that to his people, and he's not going to resist it. He's not resisting it. So he wishes the strategy could be something else, but he's going to do what he has to do for his for the financial elites, for his benefactors.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
This is where it gets to be fun. This is where the CIA, the guys that live 45 minutes from here, where I live, this is where they get to show their worth. They have so much intelligence on European leaders, who slept with little boys and when, who hung out at Epstein's ranch or whatever island, and fucked little girls, who killed their nanny, who slept with who killed their whole family when they were 9. They've got all this stuff. They've got all these things. Who is responsible for a massacre here or there? Who took $10 million? They got it all. The Mossad and the CIA have it all. So that for a lot of those people, that would mean the kiss of death. That would mean they would not be policymakers anymore. That's all they know.
So they're told rubber stamp this policy or else.
Well, there's a lot of that going on. And then there's the other aspect of it. Oh, you have 4 children and you would like them to go to elite U.S. colleges like Harvard and Yale and all these Ivy League schools. Well, you do this for us and we'll cover their tuition. The quid pro quo dimension, the bribery, which is
so there's enormous. A carrot and a stick.
Right. and plus it was U.S. intelligence and U.S. policymakers that put these fuckers in power in the first place. It's like we were talking about Maloney, with Dr. I can't remember his name.
Horn. That's right.
Dr. Horn. Right. Thank you. And we thought, well, maybe Maloney, because she sounds like a MAGA person, basically. Maybe she'll cozy up to Russia. Well, the problem is if you look at her biography and you look at the people that are in it, and you and they all got the blue, so you can click on that and you can read who they are, and then they're all fascists. And then you click one more time and you get right back to the Nazis. You're right back with Mussolini and Hitler. All the names are associated with Mussolini and Hitler. Well, who's the biggest Mussolini Hitler supporters on the planet? Who? The CIA. Operation Paperclip. They brought thousands of them over. Scott he talks about having Ukrainian Nazis 30 minutes from his house in upstate New York. Damn straight. That's called the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. And I can remember, you guys are too young, but in the 1980s, they were huge Reagan supporters. And Reagan had them up on stage after stage after stage. And I'm sitting in my fucking living room going, these are fucking Nazis, and nobody wanted to hear it. So there's that dimension too. Yeah. There's the maintenance, the maintenance and the threat of Nazism. And you can't get a more clearer example than Italy with Gladio. It's legend. Doug Valentine has written extensively on this, and he's now written extensively on the association of the CIA and Ukrainian Nazis, the Bandera people, and the CIA and Ukrainian Nazis have gone hand in hand since the end of World War II. In fact, into World War II. I mean, you've got the fucking Dulles brothers. They love their Nazis. They like the Nazis more than they did, far more than they did the communists. They were hoping the Nazis would knock out the Soviet Union. So.
Right, and that was the actual history. So, like, we've had on Jacques Powell's, and he's explained that actual history about Unlike what we hear in growing up in public school and even private education, that it was the United States and England that defeated Germany, the Nazis, and the Nazis were evil because they were racist. It wasn't. That's not exactly history, right? So
I want to say one other thing.
Okay.
And that is so you have to look at Zelensky. I have no sympathy for that little prick. I know he wanted to carry several peace initiatives, the Minsk Accords, the accords he set up with Russia, with Erdogan and Turkey as the go between, that sort of thing. He had to have done that, but he is, and you have to give him a little credit because he's under constant threat to have his throat and his family's throat cut by the Ukrainian Nazis if he gives in.
Yeah.
If he gives in. And what the Ukrainian Nazis know is in it for them is they'll become the darlings of Washington and CIA, because the CIA in Washington loves it some Nazis. They love them.
So that I was just
they can explain U.S. foreign policy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna kind of contextualize that commentary. Of course, Hitler was definitely empowered by the capitalist class, and in contravention of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was allowed to rearm. They armed themselves to the teeth, and the whole thinking was in the West that they were going to be the force that was going to take out the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union was the specter that was haunting Western Europe, because they were afraid that their people, that the working class would rise up and demand either more and more reforms and more whatever policies beneficial to the working class, or the working class would just take power in a revolution like they did in Russia. So they were very incentivized to make sure the Soviet Union was not successful, and they tried to destroy it during the Civil War. They tried to keep the Bolsheviks from winning. Like more than a dozen Western countries sent in troops to Russia, including the United States, to keep the Bolsheviks from coming to power. That didn't work out. Plan B was, arm Hitler, get him a big army, and unleash him on the Soviet Union. And that's exactly what ended up happening. And then even before World War II was over, the U.S. essentially switched sides. They had been allies with the Soviet Union against Germany, against Italy, against Japan. But before the war was even over, the U.S. and England switched sides, and they started supporting the Japanese in China against the Chinese. They started supporting the Nazis in Greece against the Greeks, and all over the place. When they thought communism was going to be in power, or the left was going to be strong, they would ally with the Nazis to put in a liberal puppet government. And Operation Gladio is essentially that. Gladio is just the stay-behind forces that were there to ensure that the communists never took power. So to understand that history is important, to understand that Nazis, from the perspective of the capitalist class, are a tool that they will always employ and go to when their interests are threatened. And so we see them using them in Ukraine. And they're definitely not above it. It's not like that liberal thing where, liberals hate Nazis. No, that's not true. Liberals embrace Nazis, and they will pinch their nose and ally with them if their interests are actually threatened. Do we need to take a break? Because I need to think of something else to discuss. So let's take a break.
We'll be right back.
When we come back.
All right.
We'll be right back with the Foreign Policy Review. Enjoy this commercial break. America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free, multilingual, borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the websites they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
Here we go.
Back to the Foreign Policy Review, and Regis Tremblay is with us today in the Crimea, and we have Billy Bob and Carlo Parcelli as co-hosts. So what's going on, Regis? What's happening today?
Hey, well, I'm glad to be with you guys. Thanks for having me. Boy, there's a lot going on, and I think you guys know about it.
Yeah, Regis, so we just spent a half hour talking about the situation, all the changes that have been going on recently with the Ukrainian counteroffensive, the mobilization, the referendum, the pipelines. So we were discussing that in the first half hour, and then we started talking about the Nazis and how the West just loves their Nazis. Can't get enough of their Nazis. So we're so glad that you were able to join us, even for the last segment here. What are your thoughts? So of all the things going on, do you want to just share what the biggest issue is from your perspective? I mean, you want to talk about the referendum, the pipeline, the mobilization. Putin said he was surprised that the referendum went so overwhelmingly in favor of joining the Russian Federation. Is that a good place to start?
Well, I'll get to that in a moment, but
Sure.
I'd like to preface what I just wrote today on but put in my video podcast. It was a commentary, and it started out with, there are some people in Russia who have this defeatist attitude because of the quote-unquote Ukrainian massive counteroffensive along the front, but especially in Kherson, Zaporozhye, and even in Donetsk. And I think that this defeatist attitude is not a good thing. In fact, if anybody in Stalingrad, during the assault on Stalingrad, was a defeatist, he'd be shot. And so I think that people have to be very, very careful with reading anything from the mainstream media, and even some of the stuff coming out of Russia. I've encouraged everybody I know to follow Andrei Martyanov every day and to follow Colonel Douglas McGregor, retired, every day. These are my two go-to analysts who not only have the military experience, the battlefield experience, the strategic knowledge. They are the two that I go to really understand what's happening. And in my opinion, according to them, what's happened is those areas were very, very lightly defended by DPR, Donetsk People's Republic, and some Russian troops. Russia's strategy was then and before, when confronting this type of an offensive, to withdraw. Two reasons. One, to save the lives of their own soldiers and as much military equipment as they could. The second part of that is Russia's strategy has been to draw, and I want to point out that these are not any longer Ukrainian troops. They are neo-Nazi battalions bolstered by thousands of contracted mercenaries with the United States Pentagon. And when they draw them out into the open, Russia's response has been overwhelming. You don't hear about that. But it's been overwhelming, and they've been able to aerial bombard them out in the open. They've been able to use precision-guided missiles from the land and from the sea, and to shell them 24/7. And I believe that is really what is happening. It's what is Russia's strategy. Now, I'll get to your questions really about what do I think is really important. Well, first of all, I highly recommend that people watch Putin's speeches on the 20th of September, and a couple of days later, when he announced that there would be a referenda in the four republics, Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye. They voted, each of them, overwhelmingly. And yes, Billy Bob, Putin said he was surprised at the turnout. He knew what the result would be, but he never thought it would be that large. This is extremely significant, guys, for two reasons, and maybe more, because I think it's a game changer. Number one, with the accession of these four regions into the Russian Federation, Russia gains an enormous agricultural and mining base resource. That is forever lost to Ukraine. Today it was announced that Russia will completely take over the nuclear power plant at Zaporozhye. When the contract with Ukraine is done, the Russian nuclear agency will take full control of Zaporozhye. What does that mean? Well, Russia at any second could turn off that power that goes to Ukraine and beyond. Now, there's another very important factor. Putin has made it very clear on several occasions in the last few weeks, any attack on Russia, any threat on the Russian Federation, it now includes the four republics who have been entered into Russia and signed into law by Putin. It includes them. So this is the question, guys. What happens? And what will Putin and Russia do if these regions continue to be shelled and attacked? Will he exercise more restraint? or is he now compelled to respond overwhelmingly? Because now the Russian people, forget the rest of the world, the Russian people who have been overwhelmingly behind their president in this conflict understand now that it's a matter of the preservation of the Russian Federation, life or death. And if Russia does not respond to these, what is that going to do for Putin's popularity and approval rating in Russia? Now, the other big part of this all came in the same few days. Putin announced on September 20th, he was calling up another 300,000 reservists. Now, some of these defeatist people believe that, well, now Russia's going to use those 300,000 to go into a defensive position. I don't know how anybody could believe that, because Putin has stated on February 24th, there are two and only two major objectives to the special military operation. The first is to demilitarize Ukraine. That means not just those Ukrainian and their brave soldiers, those wanting to defend their country, but all of those foreign mercenaries. The second objective, and this is huge, what most people are overlooking, was to denazify Ukraine. Now, what denazification implies means very clearly Russia has to go all the way to Kiev, bring about regime change, get rid of Zelensky, and eliminate all of the Nazi ideologues that have infested and controlled that regime at least since 2014. It also means going all the way to the Polish border. To denazify Ukraine, first is going to take force, and second of all, it's going to take, who knows, decades to re-educate these past decades, going back all the way to Stepan Bandera in 1945 during World War II, that have been indoctrinating the people, especially in Western Ukraine, and the children since 2014, indoctrinated in the schools to hate Russians, and in special military training camps, teaching them how to fight, how to survive, and how to kill Russians. That indoctrination is going to take a very long time. So, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have my ear on the wall when Putin and Shoigu and the Russian think tanks are debating all of this. But I think what we're going to see in very short order, and Martyanov and McGregor both agree, we're going to see an overwhelming military response now from Russia we have not yet seen. Russia cannot pull back into a defensive position. They have got to accomplish all of the goals set out by Putin in his February 24th speech. So, gentlemen, that's where I think we're at here. Russia is not losing. Ukraine has lost. And now those NATO and American mercenaries that are there are beginning to lose very badly themselves.
Well, I would say one thing that a lot of this perplexes me, and that is, for example, the Ukrainians are still able to move troops rather quickly by train, and certainly Russia has the power to take out those train lines and prevent this troop movement now, and with the advent of the referendum and the 300,000 supplementary troops on their way, I would think now is the time to stop pussyfooting around about destroying Ukrainian infrastructure. Maybe I don't know enough about tactics to know why they would allow troops to move from the Kherson region to Bakhmut, to the Bakhmut region. I don't know why that's happening, but it seems to me, as a layman sitting back, that the time has passed for doing that, especially when they put out the lights in Kharkiv for a few hours so easily, and prevented reinforcements leaving the Kharkiv railway station, just by a simple strategic bombing. I'm perplexed.
Well, one of the stated principles of Putin and the Russian military at the beginning of the special military operation was to try to avoid destroying too much infrastructure and civilians. They have used extreme patience and caution in doing that at the expense of the loss of many troops, many of their own troops. There's no denying that. However, Carlo, I really think that, as I said before, that what we can expect very shortly in the next few days or weeks, an all-out Russian assault, not only on the mercenaries, but on the supply lines. They don't have to blow up all the railroads. They don't have to blow up bridges, but they can blow up the central depots, the locations where stuff is moving. They can also blow up with aerial bombardments, with long-range precision-guided missiles on land and in the sea, any area that they want. They can disrupt not only power, as you indicated, they can disrupt all of the ability for even citizens to move about freely in Ukraine. And the interesting thing is, Mariupol is an example of what Russia is doing and will continue to do to rebuild and restore these communities. I believe, from Russia's perspective, not completely destroying the supply lines, the electrical grids, water supply, etc., that Russia, once they accomplish this goal of choking off any possibility of the remaining troops for being rearmed, resupplied, and with new reservists, new additions, they will then quickly, when they take over that territory, rebuild what they've destroyed. This is what I think is going to happen.
One of the criticisms that I've seen a lot from various analysts was that early on they never cut off Ukraine from Poland, and they never cut off. There's a major highway going through Poland that's just been delivering troops and weapons. The entirety of the SMO. So they say that they should just be able to invade from Belarus right down the border, choke off that highway, and maintain that position, and then that would hamper the West's ability to resupply Ukraine, and that's a necessary precursor to the denazification. On the other hand, that seems like a pretty aggressive tactic. It'll bring Belarus into the war, and then the West is going to escalate from that, right? They're going to, Belarus is getting the war. Well, maybe Poland will get into the war. Maybe Moldova will get into the war. So that's a risky escalation to have troops come in from Belarus. But I do see a lot of people saying, well, you're never going to be able to, demilitarize the country without stopping the flow of weapons and troops over the border from the West.
Well, I agree with you. I think Russia has been hesitant to go to the very western borders of Ukraine with Poland and destroy that entry point, that highway. But now, I think, and a lot of people are beginning to talk about Poland. Poland has made it very clear that they want war with Russia. Poland is even talking about taking back sections of Ukraine that they believe belong to them. And Poland has been assisting in several ways, financially and militarily, with the fight against Russia. So the question that I have in my mind, and some people are beginning to talk about that, what does Russia do about Poland? Now, the second thing is this, Billy Bob, you mentioned the fear of escalation. This is my thinking. I do not think if Russia is successful, and they will be, in completely decapitating all of Ukraine's military capability, and if they succeed in going into Kiev and not blowing the place apart, they don't even have to send troops in there. They've already shown they can hit communication centers and electrical grids with precision guided missiles. That if they kill anybody, it's not many people. Russia can send a guided missile in and take out Zelensky and all of his backers. They can send a guided missile in to take out the Ukrainian Rada, their parliament, if they wanted to. They can strike so many places. Now, this is what I do not believe. Given that scenario, Europe, NATO, will not escalate. Neither NATO, Europe, and the United States dare to escalate this. They do not, because they know they have been defeated. And we're hearing all this talk today. It's hysteria about tactical nuclear weapons. Russia is going to use them if they think they're losing on the battlefield. Putin has said it over and over and over again. It's written down in their nuclear use policy. They will never, ever initiate a first strike, unlike the United States. The United States has a first strike policy. They've never canceled that out. They've never said only if we're attacked. So it's complete insanity for anybody to contemplate that anybody would use tactical weapons, much less Russia, when any use of any nuclear weapon is immediately going to escalate immediately into the all-out use of strategic nuclear weapons. Nobody wants that. Russia surely does not want that. I do not believe that the people in Washington, who I believe are controlled still by the City of London and the Bank of London, owned and controlled by bankers and the Rothschilds, a nuclear war for them means the end of all their profit making from all the wars that they have funded both sides, at least since the Crimean War in around 1860. So I don't believe there's any chance that this is going to happen except by an accident, a misjudgment, a miscalculation on one or the other side that would then trigger what everybody remembers watching in Dr. Strangelove. So those are my thoughts, guys, on going all the way to Kiev, all the way to the Polish border. And I don't believe there's any way that the European Union, that the countries within Europe want to enter into this fray directly. They've made that pretty clear in most recent statements. So that's how I feel about that.
It's interesting how the Western media wants to promote into people's minds and into the discourse this idea about, nuclear war, and it just breeds fear. It instills fear in people and worry and apprehension. And like you, of course, it's only the U.S. that has ever used nuclear weapons. They set the precedent. And yeah, Russia has a doctrine. It's in self-defense. If they're directly threatened, then they'll use them, but they're not going to do a first strike, and that hasn't changed. But yeah, they want to introduce this dialogue into people's lives and into people's minds, because it's a win-win for the ruling class. Like to have the working class just in fear and wanting government to save them, but the government is the one that's ratcheting up the threats. I'm not sure, I'm not sure the West isn't looking to escalate. I mean, the United States is certainly looking to escalate, and they want to sacrifice Europe and the Balkans, and they're happy to do that, to their own benefit. We saw that when they blew up the pipelines. When the U.S. authorizes those pipelines to be blown up, or if they do it themselves, that's definitely an escalation, and that's taking a possibility of walking things back. That's taking that off the table. Because, with those pipelines, if they can't be repaired, there's no incentive for Germany to say, I don't want to be a part of these sanctions. Like, we need this oil, so let's flip the switch. Let's get the oil and gas running again, because there's no switch anymore. So,
yeah. Let me interject.
Please.
I don't know if you guys have read it, but it's been reported here in the Russian media, RT, Sputnik, and it's coming from bloggers and that kind of people, that Russia has just stated that there is another link as part of Nord Stream 2 that still is working. And all that Germany has to do is say, we approve, turn on the valve, and the gas will begin to flow to Germany. Now, I don't know if you've been covering what the Germans are saying, what the Italians are saying, what other European countries are saying is we don't want any more of these sanctions on Russia. Winter is coming. It's getting cold here already. We need Russian gas. Now they know that Russian gas is still available through this other pipeline that's part of Nord Stream 2.
But how long do you think that's going to survive, Regis? I mean, do you really think the U.S. is not going to touch it? So, no. If that's true, I mean, I hadn't heard that. So you're bringing news. You're. Thank you for doing that, because I had not heard that. But assuming it's true, do you really think the U.S. would, out of some kind of principle or strategic approach, would not put a hole in it like they did the others? Like, I think they would. I think they can.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you that they could, they would, and they can. But here's the thing: what's happening right now in the European Union, and I've been watching videos like most of the day. The German Minister of Finance totally put down the United States for the obscene profiteering that they're doing now, and they intend to do in creating this dependency of all of Europe, not just German, on American liquid natural gas. And what they're saying is this gas, first of all, new ships need to be created. They have to have new facilities that will take the gas and liquefy it so they can transport it. When it gets to Europe, wherever it gets to, they don't know how to have the facilities to turn this liquid back into gas. It's going to take years and years to create those facilities. Yeah. And Germany and the Europeans know it. And what we're seeing right now, Billy Bob, what we're seeing, Carlo, Dustin, is there are huge fissures beginning to show, and they have been showing for weeks now, across the European Union. Not from those, I call them cockroaches, rats, parasites in Brussels, but the people. And some of their patriotic people in those governments, in their own sovereign state governments, are now screaming. And they don't agree with the price caps that the union already agreed on, which Russia just laughed at. They don't want that. They're asking for special exemptions from the sanctions on the importation of gas and oil. And this is almost every single country in the European Union. So what does this mean? Well, to me, it's clear what it means. It's these people are breaking away from Washington's death threat, death hold from the UK, which would love to see Germany destroyed. That's been their game plan all along. They see Germany being destroyed as not a threat to their new empire, which they hope to expand and to control all of Europe, turn them into serfs, and restore the grandeur of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain. And so I think the significance of this, Billy Bob, even if America and whoever they're using to blow up the pipelines already do it again, America will have lost completely Europe. Forget the European Union, Europe, because they will now realize that they are not friends of America, but enemies.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Regis, and thanks for the important updates and so forth. And out there been watching Foreign Policy Review, subscribe to our channel if you have not already. Go back and watch the whole show if you missed anything. Let us know what you think. Drop some comments down there. And I'll be back here next Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you then. Have a good day.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted, and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the websites they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our new site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak